Well, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Last week we read the four ways in which the Lord speaks. As we were reflecting one of the lectures, another divine truth was brought up regarding a surprise that Jesus gives his creatures at the moment of death. And we said that today we were going to go over it, to read it. It is in volume 35, and it's 3539 in the Book of Heaven. In the Spanish book, for some reason, it's volume 35, lecture 40. We're going to go over the 3539 in English, only a little bit because it's very long. So let me read the part that Jesus says that before, at the moment that the person is dying, he comes and makes presence in that very moment. And look what he does. He says, our goodness and our love are such that we use all ways and all means to snatch her from sin and to save her. And if we do not exceed during her life, we make the last surprise of love at the moment of her death. You must know that in that moment, we give the last sign of love to the creatures, providing her with our graces, love, and goodness, and placing so many tenderness of love as to soften and win the hardest hearts.
Excuse me, which is the date?
Oh, I am so sorry. It's March 22nd, 1938.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And when the creature finds herself between life and death, between time, which is about to end, and eternity, which is about to begin, almost in the act of leaving her body, I, your Jesus, make myself seen with a loveliness that enraptures, with a sweetness that changes and sweetens the bitterness of life, especially in that extreme moment. Then my gaze, I look at her, but with so much love as to snatch from her an act of contrition, one act of love, one adhesion to my will. In that moment of the loss of illusion, in seeing and touching with their own hands how much we have loved them and do love them, creatures feel so much pain that they repent for not having loved us. They recognize our will as the origin and completion of their lives, and as satisfaction, they accept death to fulfill one act of our will. In fact, you must know that if the creature did not do even one act of will of God, the doors of heaven would not be opened. She would not be recognized as heiress of the celestial fatherland, and the angels and the saints could not admit her into their midst. So this is what Jesus does. He surrounds the soul, the creature, with love, and then the person recognizes, right, what he has done, what she has done in life, not having loved Jesus, not having loved the Holy Trinity, and then they repent. If they don't do that, if they don't accept what Jesus is offering, right, then the doors of heaven will not be opened. But I'm sure that not too many people say no, because with the love of God, when the love of God surrounds us, it's almost impossible for us to not surrender, right, in that love. So I don't know if one of you guys want to add something to it.
Well, I think too that it's necessary that we pray for such a moment for all people, that the grace involve them
Yes.
to accept even those who are very reluctant in the earth to accept Jesus.
Yeah, just like he says, only one act in his will, and the doors of heaven will be opened.
Which
Only
is the
one.
yes.
Which is the yes. So let's continue reading volume 1. Today we're going to read about the new rules that Jesus indicates to Luisa, a new system of life, so to say. So in the Spanish version is lecture 161 for those who want to review also the Spanish lecture. And in this book is in page number 40. In the morning, I went to communion, and as soon as I received Jesus, I immediately said to him, "My Lord, look a bit at what a storm I find myself in. I should thank you for you gave light to the confessor in giving me the obedience to suffer. But instead, my nature is so very affected that I myself remain confounded, seeing that I am so bad. However, all this is nothing. You who want the sacrifice will also give me the strength. But the strongest reason in me is that of having to remain for so long without being able to receive you in the sacrament. Who would be able to endure without you? Who will give me the strength? Where shall I find a refreshment in my afflictions? And while saying this, I felt such pains in my heart because of this separation from Jesus in the sacrament, that I cried my heart out. Then the Lord, compassionating my weakness, told me, "Do not fear. I myself will sustain your weakness. You do not know what graces I have prepared for you. This is why you fear so much. Am I not omnipotent? Will I not be able to make up for the privation of being able to receive me in the sacrament? Therefore, resign yourself, place yourself as though dead in my arms, offer yourself as voluntary victim to repair for the offenses against me, for sinners, and to spare men the deserved scourges. And as pledge I give you my word that I will not leave you even one day without coming to see you. Up until now, you have come to me, for from now on I will come to you. Aren't you happy?" So this is the first rule that Jesus is giving Luisa, is to offer herself as a voluntary victim to repair for the offenses against him, right? For the sinners, and to spare men that deserve scourges. But he is also telling her that he will sustain her in her weakness because she doesn't know the graces that he has prepared for her. So she was very sad because she was not going to be able to receive Jesus in the sacrament because she had to be embedded. But then he said, "Don't worry, I'll come and see you every day." And then at the end he says, "Aren't you happy?" Because she was also complaining that many times she was looking for him and he disappeared from her and she couldn't find him. But now he says, "Okay, you're not going to receive me in communion because you're going to be embedded. You don't know the graces that I'm planning for you. I will sustain you in your weakness. Just trust me." And that's why he tells her, "Place yourself as though dead in my arms." That means trust me, like a little baby. A little baby doesn't know how to take care of himself, right? It's like if mom does good things for them, that's good. If not, well, they don't know nothing about nothing. But that's how Jesus wanted her to be. Like a little baby, like dead in his arms.
How many times we are unable to receive communion? To many different circumstances such as illness, work, etc. And we can feel the deprivation of communion, and of course, it must be hard for us. But here comes the wonder of being fused with Jesus, because he replaced that deprivation and make us receive his continuously. Does not mean receive communion. Does not mean receive communion as soon as we can. Hopefully, we can go to receive him in the sacrament daily.
But if we can, it doesn't matter. Just like you said, because he is going to come and visit us. He's going to make us happy. Actually, he is in us, right? So there's a lecture way ahead. I'm not sure if it's in volume 12 that talks about a mom that wants to go to church every day, but she can't because she has to take care of her children.
Mhm.
So that mom is already already receiving Jesus because she is doing what she has to do, right? And it's not like receiving the sacrament; it's receiving the divine will, which contains the sacrament.
But we need to go daily, if we can,
Exactly.
to repay for all, to pay to Jesus all his suffering, all his glory, and everything.
Mhm. And not only to receive communion, we are giving him also. He is eating from us. In other words, we're giving him the food that he needs. That is the act of love, right? The act of offering ourselves as victims with him. One of the lectures here in I don't know exactly which volume, it says that when we go to communion, we should receive him saying, I receive you in your humanity, in your divinity, and in your divine will. So we're receiving him in every way possible, totally, in his humanity, in his divinity, and in his divine will. So I resigned myself to the holy will of God, and I was surprised by this state of suffering. Now, who can say the graces that the Lord began to give me? It is impossible to say everything distinctly. I can say something confusedly, but as much as I can, and in order to do the holy obedience which wants it so, I will try to say as much as it is possible for me. I remember that from the very beginning of me being in bed continuously, my lover Jesus would make himself seen very often, which he had not done in the past. From the very beginning, he told me that he wanted me to take on a new method of life in order to dispose myself that to that mystical marriage, which he had promised me. He would say to me, Beloved of my heart, I have put you in the state so that I might come more freely to converse with you. See, I have freed you from all external occupations so that not only your soul, but also your body might be at my disposal. And so you might remain in continuous holocaust before me. See, I had not drawn you into this bed since you would have to carry out your family duties and submit yourself to other sacrifices. I could not come so often and let you share in the offenses as I receive them. And at most, I would have to wait for when you have fulfilled your duties. But now, no, we are free. There is no one left who may bother us and interrupt our conversation. From now on, my afflictions will be yours and yours mine, my sufferings yours and your mine, my consolations yours and yours mine. We will unite all things together, and you will take interest in my things as if they were your own. And so I will do with yours. Between the two of us, there is no longer this is mine and this is yours, but everything will be in common on both sides. So the second thing here that I think is like a new rule for her is that he is teaching her a new method of life, but is to dispose her for a mystical marriage, right? And that mystical marriage is exactly what says here at the end of what we read is no longer this is mine or this is yours. It's the union between both of them. And also he told her this is another rule. He said, you are free. First you weren't free of external things. Now you are free of all your occupations, because now I can come and talk with you, have our conversations with no interruptions. When you were out of bed, there were a lot of interruptions, but now nothing should bother us. And then he tells her also, so that way you can remain in continuous holocaust before me. And the Holocaust is a sacrifice, right? All is burnt. Nothing is left. Nothing can be eaten. So that means that what he is telling her is that she should be in a state of her nothingness, that she should have nothing. She should be a Holocaust. Being a Holocaust, then she would be all for him. Nobody with no distractions. Nothing was going to be an impediment for him to come and share share his sufferings with Luisa.
This is another great lesson for us. Jesus frees her from all change, both exterior and interior, to be able to act freely. That is, he detaches her from everything and everyone. And this is how it should be with us. We must be free for all attachments to be able to act freely with him and to make everything of him. His sufferings, his storms, everything. At the same time, to give him comfort, to unite ourselves all to him. It is not yours or mine, like he said, but everything in unity. This is
Do
the
you
new
know?
rules of life, you know?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Can you say it again?
This is the new rules of life, like he said.
Yes. No distractions, no impediment, right? No attachments.
No attachments.
Mhm.
We need to act freely with him. Freely, complete freely.
Mhm.
No one act of human will.
Just like he says here, offering ourselves as voluntary victims, right?
Yes.
To repair the offenses against him.
It's voluntary, by the way.
Exactly.
It's voluntary. It's for love, only for love.
Mhm. Do you know how I acted with you? Now, this is very interesting. Like a king when he wants to speak with his queen and spouse, and she is with other ladies and other affairs. What does the king do? He takes her and brings her inside his room. They close the door so that no one may go and interrupt their conversation and hear their secrets. And so once they are alone, they communicate their consolations and their afflictions to each other. Now, if someone imprudent went to knock shouting from behind the door and did not leave them alone to enjoy their conversation, would the king not take offense? So have I done for you, and in the same way I would be displeased if anyone wanted to take you away from this state. So no distractions, right? It's only between Jesus and the soul,
So,
only between Jesus and her.
and it is an intimacy.
I'm sorry?
It is an intimacy
Exactly.
between the soul and God only.
Mhm. Mhm. And he will be offended. He says it right there. He will be offended if if someone imprudent comes, like all these things in our head that many times arise, imprudent things that come to our mind, to our memories. He will be offended if we are distracted with those things that come from the outside, right? It could be a person, it could be a thought, it could be an assignment that we have. Because if I remember there is Maria Valtorta, there was one of the readings. She was about to do some of her prayers. I'm not sure if it was the rosary or something like that. And then Jesus came to her, and then she says, "But don't you know that I'm about to pray?" So many times, or sometimes, right, we might do that to Jesus as well. He comes suddenly with something for us, and we tell him, "Can you please wait a little bit? I have something else to do." He will be offended. So that, I'm sorry.
So that's why he makes Luisa to spend almost all night in his in her, as she says, in her habitual state, and this state is the space for intimate communication with God, because she is isolated just for him, and her emptiness and her isolation is just to be full of the everything that is God.
That is true. Well, for now, we have reviewed several of the new rules, right? We're going to continue
Yeah.
reading, but only like to review them like very, very fast. One of them is like to offer herself as a victim, voluntary victim. The other one is that he is teaching her a new method of life to dispose her for a mystical wedding between both of them, right? Like just like you said there, nothing is going to be yours and mine. Everything is going to be in common in both sides. And the other one is he freed her from all the external occupations. So that way he will be free to come and visit her whenever he wanted. No distractions, no attachments.
Yes.
And I think this would be the
resign herself,
uh-huh.
resign herself as though dead in my arms.
Like if she was dead in his arms.
Mhm.
Okay.
The noise must be silenced to have that communication with him,
Exactly.
to hear his voice in us, inside us.
So he continued telling me, "From you I want perfect conformity to my will, in such a way that your will may be undone within mine, an absolute detachment from everything. So much so that I want all that is earth to be considered by you as dung and rot, which one is horrified by just looking at. And this because even if one had no attachment to earthly things, just by having them around and looking at them, they cast a shadow over the celestial things and prevent the fulfillment of that mystical marriage, which I promised you. Even more, I want that just as I was poor, you also imitate me in poverty. You must consider yourself in this bed as a little poor one. The poor are content with whatever they have, and they first thank me, and then their benefactors. The same for you. Go along with whatever is given to you without asking for this or that, which might be a hindrance in your mind, but with holy indifference, without thinking of whether it might do good or bad. Comply with the will of others. We take out of this paragraph holy indifference.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what is done to us, whatever it is, we must see it with holy indifference without thinking if it's good or bad. It's God's disposition. Whatever it is okay. Holy indifference.
Eh,
The perfect abandonment.
Huh? Perfect abandonment. Yep.
eh,
But this is
but
not, as they say, that this is the heresy of Quietism. Quietismo, I don't know how to say this word. Is
Let me look it up in the dictionary. I have a dictionary now.
Quietism.
Huh?
It's
Quietism.
quietism.
Thank you.
Okay, quietism. Thank you.
No, quite the contrary. We act in God and for God. And with Him, we move everything and do everything. But this is so difficult to understand. We need to live in that to understand, because we move all His attributes in us. All the peace, all the love, all the kindness, everything. All the misericordia, everything. We do it, everything with Him.
the difference is the intention
Mhm.
that
So
we
this is
try
the
to glorify God in everything.
yes. So this is the perfect abandonment.
Here it says perfect conformity, absolute detachment from everything. Um, poor as he is poor. Go along with everything without asking, uh, without thinking, and comply with the will of others.
Yes.
The others means those around you or at the country level.
When he says like have no attachments to the earthly things, it doesn't mean, for example, um, you can be rich in a way, have a lot of money, but still be very poor. Because what he means with the poverty is a poverty in the soul. I don't have nothing. Everything is yours. Everything belongs to you. So that is the only way that we can have a mystical marriage, or well, not Luisa in a mystical marriage. We're not going to have that. We're going to have the real marriage with him, right? But it's very interesting because we might think that what God is telling us to do is, just if you're rich, you might not be able to have this marriage with me. No, it doesn't mean that. It's whatever it is, whatever God gives you is okay. If He doesn't give you too much, it's that's what you need. If He gives you a lot, it's okay with you too. So don't even look around. And now that I'm thinking about it, all these things about Louisa and about her cause and all these things, this situation might also distract us from this marriage that Jesus wants us to have with Him. Why? Because we are looking around. And Jesus doesn't want us to look around. He just wants us to look at Him. Be detached from everything. It's okay to be informed. It's okay to be informed. Because if one day we need to say something about whatever it is okay. but don't stay there like in circles, looking at it, looking at it, looking at it. And then another news comes out and we look at it. And then we come and think about what happened last day and now what happened today and what's going to happen later on. Those are attachments. Those are early attachments. That's what Jesus doesn't want.
With the things that you are saying, I was thinking in Lazarus. He was the richest man, one of the richest men in the time of Jesus. And Jesus didn't ask him to abandon everything he has, but Lazarus was surrendered, if I can say like this, everything to Jesus.
He gave everything to Jesus. He did
Yeah,
everything.
yeah. He was not looking his rich, his all his belongings as just for himself. He was sharing everything he has, supporting Jesus in everything he wanted. And even though it's an example of human sanctity, is a good example against the young man who asked Jesus how he can have a better life. And when Jesus says, surrender everything you have, he was supposing to let everything he has because he was a very rich man.
Well, he put everything. Lazarus. I'm talking about Lazarus, not about this other person that the Bible is talking about. But Lazarus, he offered everything to Jesus, everything to serve him, everything to serve the purpose of what he was going to accomplish, and that is the way we should also be, right? Just like he tells Louisa, go along with whatever is given to you. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's much or not too much, without asking for this or that. Don't ask. That's one of the things that in the divine will we always have to have in mind. The only thing we ask for is for the kingdom of God to be extended in every other person, right? So this cost me very much at the beginning, especially because of the obediences that the confessor would give me. I don't know why he wanted me to take quinine, and I was given the obedience that as many times as I would throw up, so many times was I to take food again. Now quinine would whet my appetite, and sometimes I would feel quite a bit of hunger. I would take food, and immediately after taking it, and at times at the very act of taking it, I would be forced to bring up because of the continuous retching. And so I would remain with the same hunger as before. The word poor, which Jesus had spoken to me, would not allow me to dare to ask for anything. And I myself would feel ashamed to ask, thinking to myself, what will the family say? She has just vomited and now she wants to eat. No, I'm sorry, this is a question. She has just vomited and now she wants to eat. So I would remain content with being able to offer something to my dear Jesus. So here we have Louisa, right? That she didn't have any appetite at all, and the family bought a a doctor, and then the confessor gave her the obedience that she needed to take the quinine, which is a medication that increases the appetite, but it wasn't working for her. So she was obedient, but she kept on throwing up. But still, she was obedient, right? And then she didn't dare ask for it because then she got hungry. Now she wants to eat. But then if she was hungry and she ate, she was going to vomit again. So yeah, that was quite an experience, right, for her. However, this does not last for a long time, but about 4 months. One day the Lord told me, repeat to him the request for the obedience not to take quinine and not to take food so many times, for I will give him light. So the confessor came and I told him, and he said to me, so as not to show uniqueness, from now on, I want you to take food only once a day. And he also suspended the quinine. So I remained more quiet and the hunger went away, but the vomiting did not cease. That one time in which I would take food, I was forced to bring it up. Sometimes the Lord told me to ask for the obedience not to eat, but the confessor never gave me the obedience. He would say to me, it doesn't matter if you throw up, it is another mortification. But I would tell this to Jesus, and he would say to me, I want you to ask the question, but with holy indifference. I want you to go along with whatever the obedience tells you. And so I continue to do. So Jesus told her, yes, you should ask the question, but with holy indifference. Whatever is given to you, whatever obedience is given to you, that is what you need to do. But you need to ask, because I am telling you to ask. So she was obedient to the Lord, and she was obedient to the confessor. When about 40 days had passed, which I had taken as such from those words that the Lord had spoken for a certain given time, and which I had related to the confessor in this way, the suffering continued to surprise me every day, and he was forced to come every day. The confessor began to give me the obedience no longer to be in that state. And he added that if I fell into sufferings, he would not come anymore. Those are big words, right? So he said, you better do what I'm telling you to do. He didn't want her to be in that state anymore. In the state where she lose conscious, right? And she was with Jesus, and she was petrified. He doesn't want her to be in that state anymore because she was suffering. And then he added, if she fall in those suffering, that he will not come anymore. So there's a number. The number 40 is a very important number in the Bible, right? 40 years in the desert, 40 days before the ascension, 40 years that took Luisa to comprehend the kingdom of the divine will. 40 centuries of the divine will being exiled. 40 days where Jesus was in the cave in Bethlehem. So the number 40 is very, very important.
Meaning purification, no?
Huh?
Meaning purification.
Meaning purification, and it means the meaning is for greater works. 40 is for, that purification is for better works, for higher works, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That something good will come.
And also in volume 6, lecture 103, it's very interesting because it says that there are that sufferings contain 3 types of resurrections. Let me read it very, very quickly. 3 types of resurrection which suffering contains. That is from May 2, 1905, volume 3, 6, 103. As I continue to be in suffering a little more than usual on coming, my good Jesus told me, my daughter, suffering contains 3 types of resurrection. First, suffering makes the soul rise again to grace. Second, as suffering advances, it gathers the virtues and the soul rises again to sanctity. Third, as suffering continues, it perfects the virtues It emblemishes them with splendor, forming a beautiful crown, and the soul, crowned, rises again to glory on earth and to glory in heaven. Having this said, he disappeared. So, 3 types of resurrection: grace, sanctity, and rises the soul to the glory on earth and the glory in heaven. This is very familiar to us when we keep on reading the book of heaven, because what that means is fiat voluntas tua, right? It's the glory on earth and the glory in heaven.
And the resurrection.
And the resurrection, yes.
Then suffer for love.
I'm sorry?
And then we need to suffer for love.
Exactly. So here it says, he added that if I fell into suffering, he would not come anymore. Well, Jesus wanted her to suffer. Why? Because he was giving her all those graces, the grace of sanctity, right? And he was preparing her for that glory that he wanted to give her, not only on earth but also in heaven, to be united with him forever.
I want to remake these words, holy indifference. I think is so much important.
Mm-hmm.
Because we need to don't look anything, not even who it comes from. Just do everything for love of him and do not get attachment to anything. But this is very difficult, because we are always looking at the creatures.
Yeah.
Submit to the will to the others is so very difficult. This is not easy for the creature, of course.
Yeah.
But all this is with the purpose of forgetting about ourselves and remove their self. So this is so important.
And also the mortification, right?
The mortification, yeah, the abandonment, everything.
That's why it is named the martyrdom of the.
Of the tension.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the new rules of life. This is the big new rules of life.
Exactly.
And to understand the redemptive meaning of suffering.
Exactly. So let's continue. On my part, I felt most ready to do the obedience. My nature especially wanted to be freed, but being in bed continuously, which as beautiful as it was always bed. Having to subject myself to everyone, even in the most repugnant and necessary things of nature, and being forced to tell them to others, is a true sacrifice. So my nature did its office, and felt all consoled in receiving this obedience. While my soul was ready to do the obedience and ready to remain in bed, the Lord wanted it so, because I had begun to experience how good he had been with me, and the true resignation can change the nature of things, turning bitter into sweet. And there's a true resignation. The meaning of true resignation is in another volume, in volume 627. It says that true resignation does not put in scrutiny, but adores in silence the divine dispositions. So whatever God's disposition is for the soul, that soul is truly resigned. Just like the paragraphs before, holy indifference, whatever it is that the Lord wants to give us, it's okay. Even if it's if it comes from other people, that's okay as well.
And this is the perfect obedience.
When he gave me the obedience no longer to stay in bed, I began to resist, and I said to the Lord, what can I do? I can no longer stay for obedience does not want it. If you want, give light to the confessor, and then I will be ready to do what you want. And I spent one entire night clashing with the Lord. When he would come, I would say to him, "My dear Jesus, have patience, do not come, for obedience does not permit that you make me share in the sufferings." Up until the morning I won, I felt I was inside myself and free of suffering, when in one instant the Lord came and drew me so much to himself that I could not resist him. I lost consciousness and I found myself together with him, but so clasped with him that, as much opposition as I made, I could not detach myself from Jesus. Being with Jesus, I felt all annihilated, and I felt a certain blushing from the many reproaches I had given him during the night. I said to him, "Holy Spouse, forgive me. It is the confessor that wants it so." And he told me, "Do not fear. When it is because of obedience, I do not get offended." That is beautiful what Jesus just told her. She was all upset because the confessor was telling her something, and she was trying to do her best, to be obedient to the confessor. But then Jesus drew her so badly toward him that she could not resist it, right? And then he tells her, "Don't worry. Um, if it's obedience, if it's because of obedience, I will not be offended." He continued, come to me. Today is the new year. I want to give you a present." That morning was precisely the first day of the year. So he drew his most pure lips to mine and poured most sweet milk. He kissed me. He took a ring from within his side and said to me, "Today I want to show you the ring I have prepared for you, for when I espouse you." Then he told me, "Tell the confessor that it is my will that you continue to stay in bed. And as a sign that it is, I tell him that there is a war between Italy and Africa. And if he gives you the obedience to continue to suffer, I will not let them do anything on either side. They will reconcile." In the very act of this speaking these words, I felt surrounded by suffering as if by a garment. I was unable to free myself by myself. I thought to myself, "What will the confessor say?" But I was no longer in my power. That milk which Jesus had poured into me produced me so much love for him that I felt myself languishing, and I felt such satiety and sweetness that after the confessor came and I came round from that state and the family brought me food, I felt so full that the food would not go down. But in the order to do the obedience which wanted it so, I took a little bit, and immediately I was forced to bring it up, but mixed with that sweet milk that Jesus has given me. And Jesus, almost joking, told me, "What I gave you was not enough. You are not content yet." I blushed all over, and immediately I said to him, "What can I do? It is the obedience." When the confessor came, he started to get upset, telling me that I was disobedient. Or he would say to me, "This is an illness. If it were something from God, it would have made you obey. Therefore, instead of calling the confessor, you should call the doctors." When he finished speaking, I told him everything that the Lord had said to me, and as I said above, and he told me that it was true that there was a war between Africa and Italy. We'll see if nothing happens. And so he persuaded to letting me continue to suffer. One day, after about 4 months, the confessor came and told me that news had arrived about the war between Africa and Italy, and that without doing any harm to each other, on both sides they reconciled. So the confessor remained more persuaded, and he let me stay there in peace. Interesting, right? These paragraphs, how the confessor was telling her like to be obedient in a way, and Jesus wanted her to be obedient in another way. And then he said, "Don't worry, I'm not offended if the obedience comes from the confessor." But then he always wins. He always wins because he told him, "No, just tell him that I want you to keep on suffering because of this war. And if he lets you suffer, the war is not that they're going to reconcile." And then that was what made the confessor change his mind, only just to see if Jesus was really the one who was telling her that. And guess what? 4 months later, he just came and said, yes, Jesus was right. Jesus was the one who told you. So you can continue suffering. Let her continue suffering. So just like to review very quickly this new rules that he gave her, to offer herself as a voluntary victim, to be in his arms just like if she was dead. He was disposing her in this new method of life for the mystical marriage. Nothing external was going to stand between him and her. No distractions, no impediments. All detachments was, she was detached from everything. Obedience is one of the things that through all the book of heaven, obedience is named a lot. Actually, not only through the book of heaven, when they were about to, the Vatican was about to come and pick up all the books that she had. She was very obedient, and after that, with holy indifference, I would say, she let them take everything. And then the day after, she surrendered a letter saying, I surrender to whatever the church wants to say. Very obedient. The martyr of attention, the mortification, the sufferings, and the resignation. So those are the new rules that Jesus indicated her in her life.
To the will of others.
I'm sorry?
Submit to the will of others.
The will of what? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Submit to the will of others.
Exactly. And yes, submit to the will of others. Mm-hmm. And the holy indifference, if I forgot to say. So I think we can leave it here, right? And then next week we're going to talk about Jesus is going to dispose Louisa to the mystical marriage that he promised her. Mm-hmm. So that is the readings that we're going to do next week.
Okay.
If anyone wants to share anything else.
Sometimes we think the obedience seems to come from the confessor, but it's from Jesus.
Okay, my brothers and sisters, then we'll continue next Wednesday, reading the Book of Heaven in Volume 1. I wish you a very holy week, and read by yourselves. That is very important. But Jesus has a lot of things to tell you in your heart and in your soul. So I'll see you next week. Take care.